totally hadn't planned to do this shoe tonight. I had a different shoe all lined up, but when I saw about the drops that are coming, there's just 5 of these shoes only becoming available in the drops in the raffle. Of course, the drop date hasn't come yet, and it's this big thing, November the 30th. Who's going to get their hands on those 5 shoes? So it's like, oh, I've got to talk about that, especially for 2 particular reasons. Particular reason number 1 is this right here. That's the 711 Dunks that never came to pass, and I talked about that in a video, and I talked about why I thought it was a good decision that they didn't come to pass, because I didn't think the 711 brand really went well with the Dunk line. I'm going to talk about how whether or not I think the Sony brand and the PlayStation brand goes well with the Dunk line in today's video. And then the other thing is all the Japanese on the shoe. There are 3 different places at least, and maybe even more, where they've got Japanese on the shoe, and here I am in Tokyo, Japan, so I've got to talk about this shoe from those 2 perspectives, and of course all the important hits on the shoe and whether or not I think it's going to fly or not. So without further ado, let's get into this and take a close-up look at the Nike Dunk Low PlayStation. This is the Tokyo Bada 23 Sneaker Channel. Tokyo Bada 23 Sneaker Channel des. Mainichi Yapsuru no Den, Mainichi Mitike Design. Every single day from Tokyo, Japan, I bring you content about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news, and sneaker reviews. And what we've got in the spotlight is a Dunk, and that isn't unusual because Dunks have been very, very hot this year, like absolutely smoking hot. I would say it's maybe the shoe of the year. 2020 is all about the Dunks, even though the Jordan 5s are celebrating their 30th anniversary, the Adidas Superstar celebrating their 50th anniversary, the Air Max 90 celebrating their 30th anniversary. For me, it's all been about the Dunks because they have just been hot all year and they haven't put a foot wrong. And like I said about that 711, it never came to pass. That would have been a really, in my opinion, it would have been a bad shoe in amongst all the other great shoes that we've had throughout the year. And that includes Travis Scott collaborations, Dunks in there, as well as Air Force Ones and a ton of different shoes across the Nike brand. So here we are again with the Travis Scott. It's got that signature feature on one side and is tying it up with the PlayStation as a double kind of collaboration with Travis Scott and with the PlayStation, which actually reminds me of the PlayStation tie-up with the Superstars, which I did yesterday. And oh gosh, the name escapes me, Miles Morales. So you had Miles Morales, PlayStation, and Superstar yesterday, and then today you've got Travis Scott, PlayStation, and the Dunk line from Nike. So it's a really interesting sort of story within the kind of whole scope of 2020 Dunks and whether or not this works. Now, for me, there are issues with this shoe. I know a lot of people out there are just going to gush over the shoe without even thinking about it. It's a great tie-up. It's one of the best collaborations of the year. A great, 2 icons of the world of contemporary sort of culture tying it up together with the Dunk line. Great shoe, hyping it all over the place. But for me, I can't get on that bandwagon. There's part of me that's a bit disappointed and part of me that thinks this is absolutely fire. And I'm going to go through the shoe with you guys today and look at all the little details on there and talk about what they mean for me and which one they fall into, whether they're in the fire camp or whether they're in your fired camp. So let's do that. Let's get into the shoe and talk about those things. Now, I did say right at the top of the video that here I am in Tokyo, Japan, and here we are talking about a shoe that's covered in Japanese. Sony is a Japanese company. PlayStation is owned by Sony, and we'll get into that also in this shoe as well, because there are certain features that are Sony. But what we're starting on right now is the Japanese. In the first place, the most common place we see Japanese is on that heel branding where it says PlayStation, and it has Japanese written underneath the PS for PlayStation. A lot of people will have seen this because it's one of the most common pieces of promotional material out there. But what's less common is a look at this side right here, and you can see it actually says in English on this side of the shoe, PlayStation, underneath that PlayStation logo, and that features very prominently throughout the shoe. One of the shoes, or one of the pieces of branding, it has it in Japanese, and then on the other side you've got it in English. So we start with the heel on there, which is a traditional place on Dunks to get some kind of branding. And then if we go, let's go up to the, you know what, not up, let's go down. Let's go down to the outsole, because it has exactly the same branding without the PS on it, but it has the words PlayStation in English on one foot and in Japanese on the other. So you've got a translucent outsole that looks through to the bottom where it says PlayStation and PlayStation on the other shoe, and it's very, very cool. Now, I'm a huge fan of that, obviously being here in Japan. One shoe that didn't do it very well for me was Jordan 3 that came out. I think it was called the Denim, and I remember looking forward to it and being really excited by it. and hopefully I've put it up behind me here and you can see the heel. And then when it finally did come with that Japanese branding on the heel, I was like, ooh, do not like that. They did some kind of, it was a sort of shadow effect or a 3D effect or something on translucence, and it just, I was like really disappointed because I love Jordan 3s and I was looking to get my hands on that shoe, but when I saw that I was like, ooh. But in the case of this shoe, the PlayStation branding on the sort of heel cup, and then also on that translucent outsole was very cool. And then the third place where I know it is up on the tongues here, where you can see on one tongue it says Nike in English, Nike, and then in Japanese on the other side tongue it says Na-iki, Na-iki, the Japanese letters from Nike. And they're kind of similar branding, and the branding on the Japanese side looks really good, and I wish it was that kind of branding that had been on the back of those Jordan 3s instead of what we've got on that shoe. So up there on the tongues you've got that Japanese playing off each other. Very, very, very cool. So that's the three places. I know there's Japanese. I wouldn't be surprised if there's also Japanese on the insole, but I haven't seen the insole, so I can't tell you for sure, but definitely keep an eye out for that. Now the other two things really that I want to go to, one is the whole shoe, and just looking at the colorway, there is some discussion as to whether this is actually the right colorway or if it's been like treated with, say, Photoshop or something like that to give it kind of grays and whites and blacks. I think this is the actual color. I don't think this is some kind of like negative or faded down version of the shoe. I think this is the actual color of the shoe. And the reason that I think that is because the PlayStation 5, which has just come out, and this is part of the sort of hype behind that, is very white in some iterations, and that kind of white and black monochrome kind of effect on the PlayStation 5 is there. So I think these shoes will actually drop in these kind of like monochrome colors. And then the other thing is the major feature of many Travis Scott's Nikes is this upside down back to front swoosh, I should say, and you can see it on the lateral side, but my favorite place to actually look at it is the last place to go on the shoe, and that's the heel. So if you go to the heel, it's dominated by the branding patch up there that says Sony, and this is where I think the Dunks are going to get it wrong and they're going to get hammered, to be honest, and we'll get to why I think that in a second. But before we get to that, we want to look at what the effect is of having a back to front swoosh on the lateral side. What effect does that have on the heel? And you can see here that one side, the shoe, the medial side, the swoosh comes around and then feeds into that branding panel on the back, but then on the other side, because the swoosh is back to front, it doesn't come around. You've got that kind of lopsided effect, but I think that's very cool. I like that. I think it's a really neat feature of the shoe. But back to the thing that I don't think is a neat feature is Sony on the back. This is where I think the shoe falls down. And it especially disappoints me because of the story of Dunks, which is a series of videos that Nike are dropping right now about the history of the Dunk line starting back in 1985. There's 3 episodes that I've seen so far, the original sort of start in 85 and then the sort of 90s and then into the start of the 2000s. And part of, I think it's episode 2, talks about how Nike really went OG with skateboarders to get into the idea, like in the early 2000s, late 1990s, to bring out the Dunks and really make them a skateboarder's shoe that was authentic and was truly OG, and it was from the skateboard community. And that's where I think this is going to fall down, is putting Sony on the back of this shoe, even though it's a company, or Sony owns PlayStation and all that. I think a lot of people are going to be very put off by that because it just doesn't match the Dunk line. If these were Air Force Ones, for example, I think there'd be absolutely no problem. But putting Sony on Dunk is like that corporate sellout, and I think the skateboard community will not like this. As much as I think the skateboard community will not like this, I think the Hypebeasts will absolutely love this. I think these guys are going to have massive resale. I think tons of people are going to be after them, but your OG authentic guys are going to look at them and shake their heads and be absolutely not. That's my opinion. Love to hear from skateboarders and OG guys, because obviously, look at me, I ain't no skateboarder, if you know what I'm saying, but I'd love to hear their perspective on this shoe, and if I've got this right, if I'm calling this right. But equally, anyone who's a hype beast out there and looking for a quick resale, if you agree with me about the big resale market that will be there for this shoe, please tell us in the comments down below. For now though, time for me to sign off. Another video in the bag, and I say it that way because I do this every single day, so it's a bit of a challenge to sometimes keep the content going, but we're managing to keep trucking along. So I'll just finish up this video. Thank you guys for checking it out, and I'll do what I do at the end of every single video, which is remind you I do this every single day, so that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.